Okay, so the Futureproof Careers framework is, this is what we advise young people: do something you love, do something you're good at, and do something that the world values, which brings in this area here of a future-proof career. It's the world values. What does the world value? That's the piece that a lot of people tend to miss. Because you can't, it's all very, well, you do something that you like and are good at and so on. But if the world doesn't value it, won't pay you for it, it's not going to lead to a great career, and that's going to have, that's not going to work out well for the individual. And we're trying to give them advice so they can be successful and have a good career. So the question becomes, what does the world value? That's predictable long term. So it's these things, the world values things that are needed and that are rare, that are certain and available immediately, or sort of just generally valuable things. Rare is particularly pertinent when it comes to what's going to be future-proof long-term, it turns out. So there's three elements to the Future-Proof Careers framework, which are portable skills, character, and assets. And I'll come on to each. The first one I'm going to talk about is character. So this is how we frame it for students, that it's valuable because it's rare. We're talking about the rare person. So it's the person who will do the right thing and the thing that's needed when it's hard, not when it's easy. You don't need huge strength of character to do things that are easy. It's the person who can do the right thing when it's difficult. And we're a little bit tough love in how we communicate this. In some of the materials, we're completely explicit about this. So we'll say, who is responsible for your career? We'll say that to young people. Is it the school? Is it National Talent Academy? Is it David Jaffa? Is it your parents? Is it the government? No, it's none of those. And whilst all those can be helpful and contribute, and that you can take advantage of it to the degree that it's helpful as a young person, fundamentally it comes down to you. The young person, they're the ones responsible for their own success. And by the way, when I do with groups of students and talk about that, the vast majority of students agree. And there's something empowering about the message for young people, particularly boys, that feel this is in my control. I can get to grips with this, and this is something that I can, and become. We work with a lot of, I guess, the core age groups probably at school level, 14 to 17. Year 10 and year 12 are big year groups for using National Talent Academy courses. And the 17-year-olds particularly, they feel like they're becoming independent and they're craving independence and coming into their own as young people. So although it's a kind of a tough love message, young people respond very well to it, actually. This was one of the questions in the content. It's in one of the first lessons in our Introduction to Future-Proof Career Skills course. There are questions around young people's attitudes to their future and their career. And so this is what they say. Basically, they're saying that a person's background doesn't need to determine their future. And fundamentally, their future's in their own hands. And it comes down to, are they prepared to go for it in life and be persistent? And that those are much bigger factors than their background, whilst acknowledging that prejudice does exist, that some people do have more advantages than others, but that what they can bring to it are bigger factors in their success than those other factors. So, right, next. So I'm about to come on to portable skills, which is one of the three elements for future-proof careers. And you will see that it's very focused on companies. And so why do we do that? And it's because 82% of jobs in the UK are actually with companies. And there's far fewer that are in the public sector and in the charities and so on. So because of that, we want to focus on that as the rounded picture. But as teachers, you may have a commercial background and may have worked in company, but you may not. So for teachers who are less familiar, there's actually a big overlap with the sorts of roles that exist in companies and some of the things that happen in schools, but there are some differences. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about this aspect of portable skills and what we teach and how it's similar to what you may be used to in schools and how it may differ. So first of all, there's support services in every company. And there are things like finance, HR and training and IT. And all those same support services exist in schools. And you'll be familiar with that. There's a finance department. There's training as distinct from teaching. The majority of staff in schools are frontline teachers, teaching professionals. But there is also an HR function in the school, and there are things, there's CPD and teacher training that goes on, and that's the equivalent of how do you keep a workforce current, professional, deal with joiners and leavers. That function exists in schools and in every company as well. And the IT obviously is keeping the systems going, dealing with changes in software and new applications, so on and so forth, exists in a school. Right, next on this side is management, and team leaders is things like obviously the SLT. You may have a head of department, and so those roles exist in schools just as they do in companies. And people in team leader, they'll lead meetings and they'll do people's appraisals and involved in conversations with their team members about goals and motivating people. So that's substantially the same. Project managers is things like you may be organising a school trip or a parents' evening or an event, something like that. And that happens, there's all sorts of projects within companies that need to be managed. And then this middle area is probably the one that differs most. So this is customer facing, and schools don't quite have customers in the same way, or it differs from companies. So marketing may be somewhat similar. In that a school has a website, it'll have a logo and a brand and a philosophy, and will communicate with its stakeholders, parents and so on, governors and so on. And sales and customer support. Is there sales within schools? Not much. You could say maybe at private schools there is. They're trying to onboard parents, but maybe in a school they might be going for a grant or something like that, and putting together a pitch and a presentation. But that's something that in companies, it's a huge part of what companies do, is how do you bring in customers and bring in the money. And it's one of the most important functions in companies that works differently, or maybe it's just a lot less in schools. And then customer support, I'd say also. There is some, you may have a parent with a complaint and so on needs to be dealt with, but customer service in companies, there can be huge teams dealing with customers and their issues, and onboarding customers and training customers and that sort of thing. So in summary, the Futureproof Careers framework is focused, in terms of the way it breaks down the typical roles that exist in the workplace, is focused on companies, because 82% of UK jobs are in companies rather than the public sector. But there are strong analogies with the way schools operate and the roles you will be familiar with as a teacher in school. And so if I didn't say at the beginning, the reason we identified these 8 portable skills that are needed in every industry is because to have a future-proof career, if the whole industry collapses, say, in the most extreme case, but it can happen, has happened in my career, that if you're got one of these portable skills, it's, finance, project management, etc., you just go into another industry that's growing. And so your skills are portable, even if the industry or the company has a massive setback. Another question you may get is, what happens if you're dealing with a student and they've got a strong view to go into a particular industry? Because all these portable skills, by definition, almost are independent of the particular industry. So you've got someone who really wants to go into medicine or, music or sports, whatever it happens to be. So what I would advise is, say, do what you love. So go into the area that you've got a passion for sure, and identify a portable skill that you can apply within that field. So identify maybe that you're a good fit for sales and you can work in the sports industry, or you're a good project manager, or whatever it happens to be, because that's going to future-proof your career in that field. Right, so summary. There's 3 elements to the Futureproof Careers framework: portable skills, character, and assets. Haven't talked that much about assets in this particular video, but what I'd advise you to say to young people about that is you're going into a world with a lot of change, and more change maybe than there was in my generation. And therefore, young people need greater skills in managing change and risk than my generation did. And that's why financial literacy, financial information is particularly important for young people. Thank you for taking on board our Futureproof Careers framework and teaching it to your students. And if you've got any questions or anything, any feedback or student reactions that are outside what I've presented here, come along, email me personally and I'll respond to you. And with that, thank you.